Catherine, welcome to the Healing Corner.
Thank you, Emily, and thank you everybody out there for listening. And my goal is to share useful, inspiring, uplifting information, and because it is all about you.
I have no doubt we will achieve that today. I wanted to start with how I found you. So I recently devoured the book Anatomy of the Spirit by Carolyn Myss. I'm sure you're well aware of. She came into my awareness somehow, and I was completely enthralled with the information. I've talked on the podcast before about the interesting phenomenon that physical illness kind of manifests first in our energetic fields. And so when I learned that, I started down a rabbit hole. And so I read that book. It was so fascinating. And that's how I came to find you, because I was looking for a working medical intuitive. And it's been so fun to learn about you. And my husband and I were both on your website, and just like reading about your work and how you diagnose people and work with people. For our listeners, there's a section on there where there's a bunch of blog entries about how you did kind of a medical intuitive session on people that are famous. Everyone will know Donald Trump. Everyone will know James Comey. These blog entries are incredible. And it was one of the reasons that my husband was like, oh, I think I need to work with Catherine because this sounds so interesting. So I just wanted to say kudos to you for putting all that information out there. I know it's a lot. So you've said before that before someone comes to see you, they have on average seen 7 different practitioners. And I've mentioned before, like this is very true for my husband, who is currently healing from an immunodeficiency, which has kind of started me down a path of this alternative healing stuff. So it's fascinating because it's like, if you've gone through the Western medicine route with no real results, or like him, he's done that plus a functional medicine doctor. We've done the whole autoimmune protocol nutrition diet extensively. And while he was feeling better for a little bit, he, has kind of resorted back to feeling not great and continuing to be on medication that he doesn't necessarily want to be on anymore. So all that to say, when he first came to you for a medical intuitive reading, it's amazing because it's like 2 things. One, it's a 60-minute session that you start with, right? Where you're kind of working with somebody. And in that session, he's getting like actionable steps and things to do. And I love it because it's not this laborious process, right? I talk a lot about the benefits of talk therapy, but like sometimes that takes like a decade, right, to get results. Same with, if you're working with an immunologist like he is, or a doctor for a long time, it's just a long haul. It just feels like a long time. So the reason I wanted to chat with you today was just to kind of dive into this medical intuition space. So when you do a medical intuitive reading, you talk about how you evaluate the 5 bodies that each of us have, but may not actually be aware of, or maybe we're taking it for granted. So that includes like our physical, energetic, emotional, mental, and spiritual layers. Will you walk us through this process, and what does an evaluation look like for you?
Okay, well, Emily, thank you so much for asking. And so there's basically 2 things that I do. I do medical intuitive readings with people all over the world. I don't have to see them or put my hands on them or to know what's wrong or what will work to make them better. And then I'm a master healer. I work with people all over the world to resolve their issues on every level. I'm 63. I've worked in natural healing since I was 34. So people ask me, have you ever worked with and the answer is usually probably yes.
Right.
But we have to understand that I'm going to start out with some general basic understanding. So all illness, no matter what it is slowed down vibration. And a good way to understand this is like if you ever had a cold, when you're lying on the couch and you feel like you can hardly get off, and
Yeah.
and the day drags on forever and you feel awful. Or if you've ever been to a nursing home, you're in a nursing home, the vibration there is so slowed down, and you look at your watch, back when we were wearing our watch, and you go, oh my God, I've only been here for 5 minutes. When can I get out of here? So all illness is slowed down vibration, and healing happens when you lift the vibration. So when you put yourself in a high frequency environment, everything begins to shift. So for example, although I do work with people all over the world, I also have a healing room. And people walk into my healing room. My healing room is full of orchids. It's got full floor to ceiling windows, and it looks out over my beautiful garden, which it looks out over a forest of trees. And people walk in and are like, I already feel better just being here. So illnesses slow down vibration. Healing happens when you lift the vibration. So when you have an illness, okay, it's always happening. Everything's happening all the time on all 5 levels. Why is that the case? So you are a soul, not, and again, not that I know anything. So this is just my current understanding, not that I'm right. But you are a soul having a human experience. You are a soul and you have a body. And so by the time that you feel something in the physical body, it's been there for a while. So your soul controls what's happening in your mind. Your mind controls your emotions. So if I think that the world is a dangerous place and that everybody's out to get me and that I can never get better, then that's going to express emotionally with certain feelings. Now, your emotions control your energy system. What is your energy system? Many people have heard the chakras. It's also your acupuncture system and your breath. That's your energy body. Your energy body is your chakras, your acupuncture system, and the breath. And the energy body actually controls the physical body. So again, by the time you have that illness, that physical illness, that you go to a doctor and he says you've got high blood pressure or you're having a heart attack or you've got autoimmune disease, this disordered energy, this imbalanced energy has been in your field for some time. And in order to heal, you have to go out through the physical, through the energetic, through the emotional, mental, and spiritual. And I run the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. You may have mentioned that. And there's many wonderful, valid, fantastic, actionable modalities that work, right? Mm-hmm. And so I have great respect for many modalities. Okay. I interviewed somebody on my radio show a while back and they're like, well, this is the only thing that works. Well, anything, the truth is that anything can work.
That's what you're drawn to. Yeah.
Well, that's a whole other discussion. If you're in the space of willingness, okay, because there's 25 different payoffs for staying sick or fat or unhealthy. So if you're willing, almost anything will work. But in order to really heal, you have to address all 5 levels. And when I do my work, because I am a master healer, I look at all 5 levels. What's happening on your physical body? What's happening on the energetic body? What's happening emotionally, mentally, and spiritually? And different modalities. So let's take physical therapy, for example, which is fabulous. Okay, that's going to work on the physical level. Acupuncture, Reiki, that works on the energetic level. When you go to a psychotherapist, that's working on the mental, emotional level. Prayer, meditation, forgiveness, that works on the soul level. So there's all these different modalities that work on different levels. So when I do a medical intuitive reading, what I actually do is I read these 5 levels. And sometimes people come to me for a specific reason, such as I got a call the other day from a lady. She's like, I've got thyroid problems and I've taken this medicine forever and I'm still having thyroid problems. And I was explaining, okay, well, there's all this other stuff going on, right? You're missing things. You're not looking at the big picture. So I look at what's going on the physical, energetic, emotional, mental, and spiritual level. I write a report. And in this report, I usually make specific recommendations about what you need for your environment, your nutrition, like what you eat or how you eat, natural healing remedies, supplementary therapies that I see would be helpful for you, and exercise. Now, so as I mentioned, sometimes clients just want a general reading, like what's going on with my health, or I feel terrible, I don't know why, nobody can figure it out. What are you seeing?
Mm.
And also when I do that, I start with some general things. And just like anything, when you've done something for a long time, all this happens when I'm actually doing it, it happens very, very quickly.
Mhm.
If I'm working with somebody over the phone or on Zoom, it's like we're just having a conversation. I work for over 5 years now. I've worked for a healing center in Costa Rica. And before anyone gets there, they send in a photograph, like their face, so I can see their eyes. And they usually fill out a little report. What do I eat for lunch? What do I think? What do I think is wrong with me? What drugs do I take? And, what remedies am I on? And then based on that, I'll sit for an hour and a half and write a report. Before they hired me, the owner got 100 readings on himself from 100 different intuitives from all over the world. And he hired me because I was the most accurate.
Wow.
And it's very helpful for them, so that, because their clients are coming from literally all over the world. So when they get off the plane and they've never met this person, they have this report, they know what's going on with this person. And they also know, okay, we're going to have these modalities available because this is what this person needs in order to get better.
And you're just getting that information literally from someone's picture.
Yes. And although this morning I spoke to somebody, is really funny because I have a regular client by a certain first name, and that person by the first name wanted to make an appointment. And anyway, I get on the phone and it's like, I said, okay, well, I only have time to do on the phone. And I get on the phone, I was like, wait a minute, this is a different person. So they have the same name, we'll call it Bob, Sally, whatever. And and then I just went right into it, because I don't have to see someone or know what's wrong to
Got
make
it
it better, right?
So you're intuiting from a photograph or a voice, it sounds like.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And it's very important that the person give me permission, right? So
Right. Which brings me to a question. So the incredible blog post that I mentioned, where you're reading like Donald Trump, for example, like you're not talking to him. So can you talk about what permission looks like?
absolutely. Well, first of all, in that case, he's a public figure, right?
Right.
So, we've all seen, and as you know, he's a very polarizing figure. So you either love him or hate him. And it's actually interesting that you brought that up, because when I wrote my second book, What is Healing? Before I wrote that book, I only had one thought, which is to know what you need to know, you have to be in a state of unconditional love. So I'll say that again. To know what you need to know, you have to be in a state of unconditional love. So if I think about, I'm going to read this person and I think they're the devil, and I think they're a horrible person, well, that's not objectivity. And lots of people come to me because they want to be more intuitive. Well, another way to describe your intuition is that it's your soul guidance.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm in my ego making, and by the way, he's not somebody that I voted for. I'll just say it that way. But when you're in your ego mind, the ego mind makes judgments like, I don't like that, that's wrong, right? But what we know is on the soul level, everybody's a soul, they have a soul purpose, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at things on a soul level, often what's happening on the soul level is very different than what you think is happening on an ego level. Okay, I'll give an example of this. So years ago, I was at some convention, right? You know, like it's one of those places, this is of course pre-COVID, where you're in a room, thousands of people, and you're sitting next to somebody you've never met before. Well, this lady turned to me and she said, I don't know who you are or what you do, but I know you're supposed to help me. Well, it turns out she was a psychotherapist and she had been adopted. Well, like a lot of psychotherapists, she'd done, you know, decades of inner work, but still had not completely come to terms with the fact that she was adopted. Well, when I did a medical intuitive reading, I helped her understand that on the soul level, her birth mother had a soul agreement with her. And on the one level, when you looked at the birth mother, you think, this person's a loser. She was a drug addict. She was an alcoholic. She was an unwed mother. She had all these things, and you could shake your finger. But on the soul level, she had made an agreement with the soul of my client to allow this person's soul to get born.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so on the soul level, she had literally given her life up for the well-being of this other person. So that's an example of how, when you look at something from the soul level, often it's very different from what we see at the ego level, where we're making lots of judgments about who we see as the bad guy and who's wrong and who needed to do it better.
Right. So it sounds like you have to get into that as a medical intuitive, like you have to get into that unconditional love space in order to help somebody. Absolutely. Or read somebody. Yeah.
Absolutely. You have to get into what's called neutral. And neutral is not a very sexy subject. I never hear any other healers talking about that. But you have to get your ego mind out of the way. If I pick up a book and I say, I already know what's in this book, well, I'm not reading the book. But if I pick up the book and open the page and read the words on the page, that's reading. And when you do a medical intuitive reading, I'm supposed to be reading what is there. I'm supposed to be reading the soul, reading, and one of my 10th book is called Reading the Soul, and reading what's happening there. And that doesn't happen when we project. And that's what most of us do, is we project. This is wrong. I don't like that.
Right.
Many things that can happen to us as human beings that we don't like. A lot of us, I didn't like a lot of what happened to me in my childhood, but it made me who I was and who I am.
Absolutely. So when you're doing that initial reading, you're dropping into unconditional love to read a soul. I'm aware that you you're claircognizant, which means that you just know things. So I'm just going to use Donald Trump since everybody knows who he is. So when you're dropping in, you obviously know Donald Trump, who he is. You don't know him personally, but you're dropping in. And then can you just talk to us about how the information comes in? Because you had information on him that I think to myself, gosh, how could she know all this stuff? How can you just maybe describe that process?
Well, yes. And I would say that it's very, very fast. And so, for example, sometimes I work with people in real time, and when I work with people in real time, I have to slow down because I mean, and I'll tell people, it's like, okay, first I'm getting the information. And I say, sometimes working with me is like watching paint dry, because they have to sit there and twiddle their thumbs, while I listen, okay, and while I receive, and then I'll explain it to them. And then because I am a caring person, like I get the information, and then I have to figure out, well, how do I say this in a kind, helpful way that uplifts and empowers the person? Okay. And so, for example, sometimes people, they're really, really sick, and they've been to 50 people. They already know what's wrong with them. They have 80 diagnoses or whatever, and they're on 25 different drugs. So it's like, okay, well, then I do critical point analysis to look at what do you need to do to get better, right?
Yeah, bypass all the other stuff, Yeah.
Yeah, you already know all this stuff, and I don't need to make you cry yourself to sleep by telling you everything that's wrong with you. and making you feel even worse, right? But it's kind of like a little detective. I'll give an example. So I'm working with a lady who has irritable bowel syndrome. Okay. She's working with a functional medicine doctor. Her diet is perfect. Okay. There's nothing that's going into her mouth that is making her worse, but she's not any better. And, she's putting out all this effort and being super diligent and not eating, all this long list of things. Well, I pointed out to her that her nervous system is stuck in the sympathetic side, which means that she's stuck sympathetic. And a lot of people who've had prolonged stress and trauma, it's rewired their nervous system. And I think that's happening now to a lot of people through the pandemic, is that they've been so stressed for so long, their nervous system is stuck in the stress. And even I got invited by another healer to be on a program she was doing, and she had been abducted as a child. And she and I were talking because she's just been doing healing work for about 2 years. And I said to her, that would be like saying to you, Mary Jo, just relax. Well, you may want to relax, but you're not able to because your nervous system is just stuck, like your finger is stuck in the light socket. Right. So in the example of the client that I mentioned, I'm like, your problem is that you're stuck sympathetic. And, she'd done talk therapy. Well, you can't talk your way out of it. No. So you have to change yourself at the nervous system level. So I gave her some things to do. One of the simplest things that I gave her to do was a yoga pose called legs against the wall pose, which is Viparita Karani, which allows your nervous system to go parasympathetic. She'd never done yoga before, not particularly flexible. I'm like, here's what you do. You put your legs at the wall. Well, she's doing that 30 minutes a day. And I told her to do it 10 minutes twice a day. She's doing it 30 minutes. She's like a different human being. Her whole energy shifted. So that's amazing. So in a nutshell, part of what we have to do is when you're stuck in your wellness or stuck with your money or stuck in your career, you have to look at, where am I stuck? Why am I stuck? And the other thing that's interesting is, if you're stuck, if you give somebody who's stuck 85 things to do, they're already in overwhelm and they can't do it. So what you have to do is you have to find the simplest, easiest thing that they can do that's going to make the most profound difference.
Mm-hmm. I love it. I mean, it's incredible. I'm thinking of my husband who has had a couple sessions with you, and he won't mind me saying this. One of the things you said was, yeah, your stress level is way too high. You just need to cut that in half, and gave him some ideas of what to do. And it's like, gosh, the woman who's eating perfectly and has IBS, she just needs that little piece to help her unlock and get to the next level because she's doing everything else perfectly. And it's so fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Yeah. So yes. So that's the critical point analysis, right?
Absolutely. So I'm aware that you have come from a lineage of medical doctors, 4 different generations of medical doctors. How did you arrive at your current profession, and what did that look like growing up in a family who's in that profession?
So, okay. So, and this is interesting. So my brother's a doctor, my dad's a doctor, my grandfather was a doctor, my great-grandfather was a doctor, and my uncle was a doctor.
Oh, wow.
Okay. And one thing, sometimes people ask me, well, I had great respect for the medical tradition, right? There is no one way. Doctors heal people every day of the week. That's why we go to them. And if I'm in a car crash, take me to the emergency room, right? So what happened to me was, I was ill when I was younger, and I was the perfect patient. I did everything the doctors told me to do. I took drugs, all that stuff. And finally, when I was about 34, I got really, really sick. And I go to the doctors and they're like, quote unquote, we don't know what to do to make you better.
Mm.
So this is like most of my clients. They're like, okay, I've tried really hard. I've done everything and nobody knows what to do. And I don't know what to do. And I've been doing everything right. So I remember at the time, I live in Atlanta, Georgia, and somebody said, well, you need to go to this person. So I went to this person who did natural healing, and he started making me better. And I remember thinking, well, I don't really know what he's doing, but it works. And I want to do what he does.
Mm.
And so I started studying natural healing because it was like, well, this works.
May I ask what his modality was?
Yes, he was a kinesiologist, and kinesiology uses muscle testing, right? He was a kinesiologist. He was a nutritionist. In other words, like he had knowledge of natural healing remedies, and he had ways of testing the body, to see what would make, this makes your organs better, that makes your organs worse, right?
Got it.
And at the time I was extremely sick. And he got me feeling better. And I was like, wow, okay, this is cool. I want to do what he does, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I started studying. And so I'm very blessed. I've studied with healers from all over the world, many different modalities. And
Mm-hmm.
yes.
Yeah, I noticed that you've done extensive training in so many things like yoga and qigong and body massage therapy. You're a Reiki master, and you're also like a flower essence practitioner, in addition to being a medical intuitive. So it sounds like you've done a whole host of exploration in different
Oh
modalities.
yeah, and a nutritionist and a kinesiologist and a Reiki master teacher. And people ask, I'm like, just go look it up.
Yeah.
But the way that it works, usually how people hear about me is somebody will hear about somebody who's struggling. They'll go, well, just call Catherine. She'll figure it out.
Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. What may I ask, what does the doctors in your family, how do they react to your profession now?
I love that you're asking me this question because I'm very, very close to my brother who's there. My brother and my father are both ophthalmologists. My father's retired. My grandfather was a country doctor back in the day, back in Virginia. And you would call him an internist, right? My uncle was another ophthalmologist, and my great grandfather, back in the day was also a country doctor, right? So to answer your question, my brother and I are very close. We have a very loving, respectful relationship. And nobody in my, not nobody, but they don't talk to me about what I do. Let's just say that right? And just like everything else in the family, I think respect and love go a long way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they know about my books. I remember when I was in my 30s, my brother was very respectful of me because he's like, how did he put it? He said, my brother let me know that he was very proud of me. He's like, you've changed your life. You have your own business. He sees that I have my own business. I run my life my own way.
Mm-hmm.
I help people,
Right.
Even my sister-in-law sent me a message just this week and said, I am in awe of how much you help other people.
Oh my God, that's such a gift to have that.
Yeah. So I don't make a big deal about it. It's just like everything else in family, you got to keep your ego in check.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's nice that your brother at least is kind of acknowledging what you do, because it seems like such a big part of your life and who you are. And to have that coming from him must feel really good.
Oh yeah. Well, and recently my mother has had, I'll just say has had, my mother's now 85 and she's had some major health events and in the fall and in March. And so in last fall, she fell and broke her wrist. So I went down and I helped her as one does, being a daughter. And then the more recent health event, which I don't want to discuss because it's my mother's privacy, and I talked to, some of my mentors about this. When you're a healer and you have family members, you have to remember your family member first. And we have to respect other people's past. So for example, I'll just say this. I've been with my mother to her gastroenterologist with her. I've been with meetings and I keep my mouth shut.
Oh, I'm sure that's no easy feat.
No easy feat. And although I did go with my mother to her internist, and I was very concerned. So I was asking a few gentle questions that I was like, these are safe questions. And the medical doctor turned to me. She's like, you sound like you really know what you're talking about. I told some of my clients and yoga students, they just howled with laughing. But I was like, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Right. Not
Yeah.
revealing anything more.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Right. I think that's so valuable to think about what value am I adding as a daughter first, who's caring for her mother and being respectful of her wishes versus trying to insert yourself and your know-how, in every situation. I'm sure that's been really hard to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you have to know what your primary role is.
Do you know, or actually, before we get into what you do now, can you tell us, like, when did your abilities to help people in this way come online, or when did you become aware of them?
Oh, well, that's another question. And sometimes people ask me, well, when did you figure out you're intuitive? And so this is the story that I tell because I went to Brown University. I was Phi Beta Kappa. I made straight A's. I never pulled an all-nighter. But so I have a lot of left brain learning. But my story is when I was 6 years old, we lived in London, England. My family lived in London. And it was around Easter time, about this time of year. And it was my little brother's birthday. And my parents were organizing an Easter egg hunt. So my parents got my brother and me to go hide while they hid the eggs, in the garden, which is what, that generally happens. And my parents were talking with great enthusiasm about this golden egg. Well, every kid wants the golden egg. I mean, it's fun to find the little eggs, but you want to have the golden egg because that's like the biggest chocolate thing, wrapped in beautiful, shiny gold paper. So anyway, I hid with my brother. And then the day of the Easter egg hunt came, my parents opened the door to the garden and I walked straight to the golden egg.
Oh
I found it just like I walked right to it. Well, my parents assumed that I cheated, which I didn't. And so I got spanked. And I think this happens a lot to other intuitive children where you just know stuff. I remember also at that age, I would say things. I was always getting spanked because I would say things about stuff that I wasn't supposed to know about, and I just knew. And so I got spanked. They assumed that I cheated. But when people ask me, when did you realize you were intuitive? It was well, that would have been the first time that I actually remember. Right?
Got it.
I didn't call it that at the time. I was just I want the golden egg. Where is it? Okay, it's right there. I'm getting it.
Exactly. May I ask, had they buried it? I'm about to, as a mother of a 5-year-old, I'm about to do an Easter egg hunt with him and hiding stuff. Did you know, or did you realize they had really tried to hide it too?
Of course. Yes.
They buried it. Yeah. Okay. I hear people sometimes going crazy, putting eggs in walls and plastering over it and stuff. You would have been able to find that one as well. I had a girlfriend who had that happen. That's fascinating. I do hear a lot about women that are psychic or intuitive, like their parents are just so uncomfortable with it and they don't understand how they could know this information. And so it's better to just kind of squash it in their mind, it sounds like.
Well, yeah. And, it was quite challenging for me growing up. And as it is for many highly sensitive people, right? And it was actually kind of a relief to understand that this is my gift. This is why all this stuff has been happening, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I want to point out, if any of you know, I'm sure you've heard of the Myers-Briggs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's a personality thing. And there's a personality type called the INFJ. It's the same, the INFJ, it's the same personality type as Carl Jung, I think Mahatma Gandhi, Oprah. But anyway, you can look it up, but that is only 2% of the population. And we're very focused on the well-being and upliftment of others. And we're the most intuitive type.
Interesting.
We're just born that way.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I think I'm an ENFJ, but I notice as I get older, I slide on the scale toward introverted, as I notice that this is common too with other people, like you may change a little bit, but
yeah,
it's fascinating to know that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, but yeah, there are just some people and you're just like highly sensitive. You were born that way. I've done a lot of inner work and I know that I've had multiple past lives doing this work,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to know, because I've had people say to me the level of skill that you have cannot be taught or learned. And of course, me being me, I'm extremely curious and how does everything work? Want to understand a lot about life and people. So I've studied a lot, but I have had past lives doing this work that I've seen in my own inner visions.
Interesting. So
Yes.
then may I ask, you've just said you can't be taught this kind of thing. Have you, in your adult life, trained with anyone that's doing similar work as you?
Yes. Yes. I've absolutely trained. I've trained for many modalities, including medical intuition. Yes.
Interesting.
Right. And that's just really, that just gave me a system, like, how to,
A process. Yeah.
Yeah. A process. Yeah. Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But what it really looks like is you're just having a conversation with me. And I've had people say to me, you understand me better than my best friend who's known me for 20 years. Or yesterday I was working with a client and we were working on a self-esteem exercise. So I said, I want you to write down a list of qualities that you have. And she wrote about 10 qualities and I wrote about 60 qualities. And she's like, I've been living with myself my whole life and you understood all this stuff about me and it's all true, but I just didn't really see it. Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So cool. May I ask, do you notice certain patterns of people that have been coming to you, especially over the last couple of years, of ailments or reasons to come in?
Well, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but this has been an incredibly difficult time for everybody.
Yeah.
And I would say that there's a lot of anger right now. And I think there's a lot of disappointment. One of the things that makes people depressed is when you have certain expectations. I was saying to somebody the other day, it's like they say, I played the game right. I've been honest. I worked hard. I paid my taxes. I took my vitamins and here I am, right? So there's a lot of dashed expectations. Although we could look at what is bad and what's been bad about this period is pretty obvious, and I don't need to continue talking about what's been so difficult about the pandemic. But if you study chaos theory, there is a man named Ilya Prigogine, and he won a Nobel Prize for chaos theory. in order to move to a higher level, you have to go into chaos. So if you look at, let's say you look at the bedroom of the average teenager, it looks like, a bomb went off, right? And so what's happening in our society is that all the old structures are being broken down. And I even have a photograph that I took in my healing room in March 2020, and my orchids are blooming and it's just absolutely beautiful. And I was like, I really liked it the way that it was. I was comfortable, right? But I'll say for myself, this period of time has thrown me even deeper into my spiritual practice than I already was. And brought me an even greater appreciation and reverence for my spiritual family and my spiritual community than I've ever had before. And so I think that the challenges of this time have been so great that that people either get real and get more grounded and connect to their view of spirituality, or they get literally wiped off. Right? It's like their life just gets swept up in the tide.
I'm recalling as you're talking, I'm reminded of a recent interview that you did with Linda Howe, who I was nerding out so hard on this interview when I came across it. And if you're listening and unfamiliar with Linda, she wrote the seminal text, How to Read the Akashic Records, back in 2009. And it was such a mind-blowing moment to see you both talking about what's going on right now. I mean, it's fascinating to think about the pandemic from a spiritual lens and from an Akashic record lens. And I remember you guys saying like everything is up for grabs right now. How we consider our bodies, how we consider our life, like what we're doing in the world. And I resonate with what you're saying. Like it's caused you to go even deeper into your spiritual practice and get real. I notice I'm doing that with myself. Like, a lot of people I know are doing that. And anyone who's kind of hanging on to the old way or like wishing it would go back to normal are kind of like at a disservice in a way, because there's no way that's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. No. And Linda Howe and I were talking because I live my life by guidance, as you can imagine. And I remember in December of last year, I asked for guidance about 2022. And what I received at that time was that this was going to be a year of unprecedented change. In other words, everything was going to change so quickly and so rapidly and so thoroughly and completely that average normal people were going to have a hard time keeping up. A lot of depression is simply pressure. And so when you look at the pressure of change, like what we've been through, education changed, health changed, how people work changed, their relationship changed, because suddenly instead of seeing, your partner at the end of the day or on the weekends, now you're with them like 24/7. So everything's changing, right? And so it's my view that in a time of unprecedented change on all levels, and we're talking about your money's changing, how you have to take care of your health is changing, your energy is changing, emotional, mental, and even at the spiritual level, many things are being redefined. That during a period of unprecedented change, it's really critical in my view. And again, not that I know anything, not that I have anything figured out, but I'm going to give you a visual. If you think of a vertical line, if you're standing up, that's what's called your hara line. It connects you from the divine through your body into the earth. And when you're grounded in your body and grounded to the earth, then you can sway like trees sway, a willow tree sways. And then when you're you're grounded to the earth and connected to the divine at the same time, that is how you can best navigate this period of change. Even just this morning, I was went into meditation and I asked guidance a question about how do I get in my own way. And my guides told me I didn't ask for guidance enough.
You should talk to us more.
Yes. And I'm somebody who's praying twice a day at least and using my guidance in my work all the time. But again, once you kind of understand you are a soul having a human experience. And an intelligent question to ask is, what is in my highest best interest at this time? I say, don't ask can I questions. Can I eat this hot fudge sundae? Yes. Is it in my highest best interest to eat the hot fudge sundae? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe it's in your highest best interest to do something else. But when we're constantly, really listening to spirit and asking for guidance, then we can be guided to all that leads to our highest good and the highest good of everybody around us.
Totally. What would you say to people that are asking for guidance and getting answers they don't want to hear? I think that's the biggest thing, for like my inner world is like, just inner network. It's like, man, that's actually not what I wanted to know.
I would say that you're normal, right?
Yeah.
Right. And that's where we just have to have humility. And you can look it up. I've done a video on this and a blog about this, which is how to get your shadow out of the way. So what is your shadow? Your shadow is all your unprocessed emotional garbage. Okay.
Totally.
And we all have one. And so it's an aspect of our ego. So my ego wants things to be a certain way. I want it to be easy. I don't want to have to work that hard.
Right.
I want everybody to like me.
Right.
I don't want to have any conflict. Right. And so when you practice getting your shadow out of the way and then ask, right? Yeah. And if you hear something that you don't want to hear, and let me back up, because a lot of people, I think, are afraid to ask for their guidance. Your angels will never be scary. Your angels, if you hear something that's scary, it's not your angels. It's not your divine guidance. I mean, I could tell you stories where I was actually in a dangerous situation and my angels guided me so gently and so lovingly, and it was not frightening at all.
Yeah, if you'd be willing to share, we'd love to hear it.
Okay, well, I'll give two examples. One, probably everybody listening has maybe had this example. So one day I'm driving down the road in Atlanta and I'm at the stoplight, right? And the light is red and then the light turns green. So I'm at the front of the line. It's my turn to go. I'm legally correct to go. And I clearly heard stop. Well, right as I heard this car on the other side sped through the red light on his light, and they were going really, really fast, right? And went all the way through the intersection. And if I had not listened, I would have been in the middle of the intersection, legally correct and dead. Okay. Another example, years ago, I was scheduled to teach in Seattle, Washington. I was scheduled to teach a workshop. And people had signed up and paid money and all of that good stuff. But every time I kept thinking about that, I was just like, there's something seriously wrong about that. And so I called up the sponsor and I said, I really apologize. And I was like an officer in this nonprofit organization. And I said, I'm so sorry, I'm not going to be able to come. Well, they were really upset with me. And this is like months in advance that I got this information, like maybe 2 months in advance. And then the day before, I think, anyway, the day I would have been flying in, there was an earthquake at the airport.
Oh my gosh.
Shut down the airport. And probably the most dramatic story that I could tell about that was I was in London in 2005. This is a good story. And as opposed to the other stories.
No, I've heard this one. I like this one. Go ahead.
So I'm on the train in London, and then all of a sudden, and I was by myself, and I felt this huge wave of incoming negativity. And I'm like, what is that? I'd never felt anything like that. So I'm a Reiki master, drew my Reiki symbols, put my hands up, couldn't stop the energy. I was like, huh. And I didn't know what. I remember at the time thinking somebody must be talking trash about me. Okay. And then the next day I was at a crystal shop and I saw these two crystals, didn't know what they were. I'm like, I need those crystals, bought them, went home, looked them up in the crystal book, and they were Aqua or a Quartz. Well, Aqua or a Quartz protects you against psychic attack. So anyway, Wednesday, get in the train, drive into London, went to Covent Garden, come all the way back. And anyway, that Thursday, there was a friend and he had scheduled about 10 clients to see me that day. So this gentleman, very kind, had spent a lot of time talking to his clients about me, who'd never met me, and said, you got to go see this lady, Catherine. They'd all changed their schedules. Well, I think I called him up on that Wednesday and I said, I'm really sorry, I can't come. Again, everybody's kind of upset with me. And all I got was that if I went in, I would have a hard time coming back. So
that was the guidance you received.
That was the guidance that I received. So it was not scary. But it was like, So that Thursday morning, I remember it was a beautiful morning, sunny morning in London. And because I had canceled everything, I'm just out going for a walk, enjoying the beautiful day. I come back from my hour walk. I look on the TV and the terrorists had just blown up the subway.
Oh my gosh.
And 53 people died that day. And they blew up the subway and then they blew up a bus so that they figured that, people getting off the subway would then get on a bus. So, 53 people died. Remember how many people were injured. I was okay. And
so were all the clients that were meant to see you.
Exactly. Because I was like, okay, we're not doing that.
No.
So going back to your question, your guidance, if it's scary, it's not your guides.
Yeah.
And again, you may, if you're receiving something you don't want to hear, clear your shadow. You can look up how to clear your shadow, Catherine Carrigan. And then, just ask more questions.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
How can I do this better? Is there a gentler way that's for my highest good?
Mm-hmm. Love that. Because it kind of just takes away all the ego stuff. It's like, all right, what am I actually meant to be doing? And let's just go with that instead of like trying to logically figure it out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That. Yeah.
Yeah. And, I, which brings me an interesting thing because I love to study. And there's a lot of information, but to me, like information can almost be like clutter because if you look at somebody and go, I already know what's wrong with that person. Well, again, you're not reading, you're not listening.
Yeah.
And so the more that we can really learn to be in tune with our own soul, then we can be guided in everything that we do. And that can work out for the highest good of everyone.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I'm thinking of, I'm reminded of one of the readings that I read that you did and how striking it is because, everyone's wanting, we all want to achieve, we love the idea of like achieving our highest good and kind of getting back to like the medical intuitive sessions that you do. It's like, it can be hard to function in the world if we're like dealing with like a health problem or like a big emotional issue. And so as you're talking, I'm seeing so much of like the value in your work is like just clearing all that stuff so that we can be clear vessels for then like going to achieve our purpose. And I want to talk a little bit about some of the particulars that you get into in a medical intuitive reading. Like, that I think the audience will find fascinating, because I know I did, is like one of the things you do is kind of read someone's like overall energy, like their chi, right? Um, and and you also look at kind of like their high or their lowest functioning organ, which I was surprised to read on your website that like all of our organs vibrate at a certain level, and that you're able to read when someone's organs are like not functioning well. And like to go back to the Donald Trump example, I think you said that his gallbladder was struggling, and it's just interesting to hear some of this stuff. Can you talk a little bit about like some of the other things that people might find that are kind of unexpected, or what they should be, things that they could think about in regards to like a medical intuitive reading, and some of the particulars you're going to be
Well,
saying to them?
the first thing I look at is a person's overall, what I call chi level. This is your life energy. So
Yeah.
this is the analogy that I make. If I have $1 million in the bank and I make a mistake, it's like, oh, well, gee, wish I hadn't done that. But if I have $100 in the bank or $10 in the bank and I make a mistake, that's really not good. And so when you think about your health, there's so many ways that people think about their health. It's like, I eat well and I exercise and, whatever,
Yeah.
I get enough rest. Well, when you think about what helps me cultivate, the Chinese call it, helps me cultivate my chi, what builds my energy.
Yeah.
So for me, it's lying in my hammock, right? That's one of the big things, or practicing yoga. That helps me, maintain excellent energy, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm 63, all real, my hair, my wrinkles, all of it, body, and everything I do requires a lot of energy. And when you have good energy, then you can face an illness and kind of get through it,
Yeah.
right? Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like having a good immune system. And when you have good energy, then you can cope with the challenges that life has, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Mm-hmm.
another way of thinking about it. And, we live in a very stressful time. So, but people are very consistent. The word that I use is consistent. Who have really consistent personal health practices,
Mm-hmm.
they tend to have and maintain really good energy, right?
Got it. So I'm like 39 years old. And I know you kind of do a rating on like a scale from 0 to 100. So if my rating is like at 39 for my age, like that would be a good rating. It's not a good rating. It should be higher.
So the way I put it is 50 out of 100 would be average for a person your age.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. Got it.
All
Mm-hmm.
right. And then when somebody's dying, their life energy starts to drop below 20, right? That's one of the reasons, it's like, okay, what's happening here?
Got
Right.
it. Got it. Got it. Okay. Very cool. So
Yeah.
neat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
Oh,
when
go
you
ahead.
look at, everyone has an organ that's like most stressed. It's kind of like, maybe when you were in college, you were like, had trouble with economics or what have you, or whatever it was. And so if you understand what your most stressed organ is, if you just get that organ working well, then sometimes everything else in the body can flourish.
Got it. Interesting. So
Yeah.
everybody has something that's maybe on the weaker side, or as you said, not their favorite subject in school.
Yeah, not their favorite subject. Well, sometimes this could be hereditary, right? Yeah. Like a lot of people, for example, have a genetic predisposition for diabetes or heart disease or what have you, right?
Got it. Love that. Yeah. So then, like getting into some of the treatments that you recommend to people, I'm reminded of the woman that you talk about who, you're doing some self-esteem exercises, like some things that are a little bit like unexpected. And one thing I remember reading about one of your clients was that she was recovering from breast cancer. And one of the things that you had recommended to her was you need to get a new wardrobe, like to literally breathe, right? Like new life into your clothing and into your energetic body. And I thought that was so interesting because it's not something you would expect to receive, for quote, like medical advice. Can you
Yeah.
talk about that?
Well, okay. First of all, color heals the soul at the soul level. And, color is a vibration.
Mm.
So again, there are entire healing modalities that just use light therapy and colors, right? And so, for example, a lot of people who are depressed, they walk around in black all the time. Well, black attracts negativity. And I
Mm.
have black clothes, but it's like I wake up every morning and I ask for guidance about what color I need to wear. And I figure out what's your power color, what's your sexy color. And you know, what colors are going to really uplift your spirit.
Mm.
But especially for women, at the soul level, women need to feel beautiful. And men need our beauty. It's how we express our divine feminine. It is the opposite of superficial, right? So when a woman is in alignment with her divine feminine self, then she uplifts everybody around them. I mean, just ask a guy. I was talking to a client of mine whose brother was shot in the head.
Mm.
And when he came to in the hospital, the first thing he asked for was a photograph of his girlfriend.
Oh. Yeah.
So, yeah, so it's not superficial at all. And so many women, as you know, have a disordered relationship with their body. And so I always say, dress like a bag lady, eat like a bag lady. And when we take good care of our appearance, then that's an outward expression of how we need to be treating ourselves.
So fascinating. It's all related. Hmm.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Do you have any other examples like this with some of your clients, or any just like remarkable stories, like people really healing or coming back into their highest self after working with you?
Oh, well, thank you. Well, I have a number of clients of mine that if you saw their photograph, you would never believe how sick they had been at one time. And that, some of these people are like the most beautiful, radiant people you've ever meet. I'm coming to mind, I have a client now, and she's actually a paid model now.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
but when she first came to me, when she was 16, the doctors completely removed her large intestine, and so she was going to the bathroom 30 times a day, didn't have her period. So I worked with her over time. We completely normalized her digestion. And then I worked with her over time to normalize her female hormones. And then I worked with her to overcome infertility. And now she has a son.
Oh my gosh. That's amazing.
Yes.
Hmm.
And then I helped with her with her business, all that stuff. So yeah, so it's very rewarding. So yeah, I have clients. I remember one client that I have, a long-term client of mine. I remember when she came for the first time, this is back long, again, she's worked with me maybe 12 years now, I think. And at the time she came because she was suffering from infertility. And I remember she came and we met in person. And I remember thinking, I was like, wow, that was a brilliant first session. Well, I remember she called me up and she said, I just want to let you know that was a complete waste of my time and money. And I said to her, I said, okay, I want you to come back. I'm going to give you the next session for free because you're going to work with me for years and we're going to end up being best friends. And she now tells that story and she laughs because she'd heard about me. So I helped her overcome infertility. I helped her with her second child. I've helped her with her business. I helped her when she got a divorce from a narcissist. I helped her get the business away from the narcissist. I helped her with her money. I remember one time she came and she had a list of possible stocks. She'd inherited about $12,000 from her father. She brought in a list of companies that she could invest in. And I said, okay, do these. I think it was 5 to 7. I don't remember. She said, pick 5 to 7. And then I had put her with my because intuition's good for everything. I put her with my guys at Morgan Stanley. They called her up 2 months later, and they said to her, "We just want to let you know that you beat the best people at Morgan Stanley." And she called me up, and we just had a big laugh about it. I don't do my money that way because I don't want to think about it, right? I find the best people. I'm very diligent. Okay.
Yeah.
But I've helped her pick the right people to date, all that stuff.
So what I'm hearing is that you're not just a medical intuitive. You also help with career and money, and I guess it's all linked, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. My main focus is I like to work with people who want to be healthy and happy and make a contribution to the planet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, Catherine, you've written 10 books, 8 of which have become Amazon #1 bestsellers. Congratulations. In your most recent book, Reading the Soul, you help us understand what might be going on with us at a soul level. And a lot of times you talk about how like old karmas and ancestral wounds and negative energies might be affecting us in this lifetime. And actually, I think what I want to ask here is like, as you continue to write books, like, does just the latest one become your favorite? Or would you, I know it's kind of like choosing children, but like, is there one that you're sort of like, that is my favorite book?
I would actually say Reading the Soul is my favorite book.
Oh, okay.
But I'm repeating myself, but I follow my guidance about everything. I'll tell you a story about my book, The Little Book of Breath Work, because I guess it was in 2018, I got the guidance that I needed to write a book about breathing. And I'm like everybody else, like you asked, what do you do if you get guidance you don't want to hear? And I was like, who's going to read a book about breathing? Who needs a book about breathing? Anyway, my guidance was very insistent. And I was just like, okay. And so in 2019, I finished the book, and it's a book about breathing exercises, hand mudras, and affirmations. And it includes a routine that will cut anxiety in half in 8 minutes.
Wow.
So it's very powerful for people who want to reduce anxiety. Anyway, so as soon as I finished, I was like, okay, I get it now. And so it was a real struggle, and then finally I was like, all right, I'm doing it. And then a year later, March 2020, what happened? Nobody could breathe. The pandemic started, and I gave that book away for free to people in 17 different countries.
Wow, that's amazing.
So I was really thankful that I had listened to my guidance.
Wow, that's incredible. Catherine, I can't believe we're coming up on time here. I want to make sure that we get to what you're currently offering people. Will you tell people how they can work with you?
Oh, you're so sweet. Well, I have 2 websites, CatherineCarrigan.com and UnlimitedEnergyNow.com. UnlimitedEnergyNow.com, there's a lot of free information on there. It's like an encyclopedia about how to be healthy. And CatherineCarrigan.com, I've got all the videos from my radio shows and lots of blogs and all that good stuff. So the best thing to do if you want to work with me is just to send me an email. And I love what I do. I prefer to keep my life quiet and simple. And so I'm very focused. Somebody asked me, there's all these different programs out there, and I'm like a gardener. I like to play with the flowers. I love working with people. So
yeah. And you offer like one-on-one guidance, and then you're also teaching yoga classes. Are there any other things that we should be aware of that you do that someone might be interested in?
My radio show is free, and you can watch the videos on YouTube. And it's a real service because I'm interviewing, healers from all over the world. But that is pretty much it. And you can sign up for my newsletter so you can learn all about how to be healthy naturally. But, people come and I'm like, I've got plenty of money, plenty of business. My goal is to truly be of service. So there's no gimmicks.
Yeah. Well, Catherine, thank you so much. It's been an honor to chat with you today. And thank you so much for your time and coming on.
Thank you, Emily. And thank you, everybody out there, for listening.